Good morning. Welcome back to Kirkstone. As described in the introduction to Cacti, Cactus video number 1, we will be particularly concentrating on a series of genera that we have in this main greenhouse at Kirkstone, starting with the genus Gymnocalycium, a South American widespread genus, and then moving on to a couple of North American genera that are within the overarching Echinocactus concept. So to business, Gymnocalycium. There will be about 3, maybe 4 Gymnocalycium videos looking at a whole range of Gymnocalycium related subjects. We'll be looking at some unboxings, so some hauls from cactus suppliers that supply Gymnocalycium. We'll be looking at some pictures of Gymnocalycium in habitat and how different the habitat plants are from cultivated plants. We'll be spending a small amount of time looking at the botany, the taxonomy, the classification of Gymnocalycium, where it fits within the overarching revisions, and a brief discussion on whether we on one hand agree or don't agree with those revisions, but generally looking at every possible aspect of the Gymnocalycium collecting hobby. And I use that phrase very specifically because Gymnocalycium is one of those groups that many cactus and succulent collectors can specialise in. Now you could say you can specialise in any genus, and that's true. You could specialise in tomatoes. The thing about Gymnocalycium is it's a widespread group with a wide enough range of bodily morphology, so bodily structure, shape, colour, spination, to make it interesting, but similar enough for it to be collectible and to give the feeling that you're collecting a set of plants. So Gymnocalyciums look similar enough to one another to be interesting and to make an attractive display. They have similar flowers. 90% of the flowers are white, maybe 10 to 15 are whitish towards pinkish, and there are a couple of red and yellow outliers. I believe there's only one species with yellow flowers in Gymnocalycium. And they go from super spiny, from Risserii, and a couple of others that almost look like Uriocyce in their strength and the heaviness of the spination, almost like South American Ferrocacti, all the way down to almost spineless species like Horstii. There are very pale coloured Gymnocalycium, and there are super dark ones like a very spectacular Birktii. So whatever your fancy, whatever the particular thing that you like about cacti, you will find it somewhere within Gymnocalycium. Now if you do a general search and Google Gymnocalycium and you went to a generalist site like Wikipedia, you would see that there are conflicting estimations of how many species of Gymnocalycium there are. Probably round about 100, 115, 125-ish would be more or less standard these days. Go back a few years and you will see, because of the changing concept of what the species idea is within botany and taxonomy specifically, you would see that number rise to up to 250, 275 different names of Gymnocalycium available. So you could have a greenhouse full of 250 Gymnocalycium with different plant labels and names on, quite legitimately bought. However, were you to look closely at those plants, you would see that they fit into generalized streams of very similar plants with very slight differences. Now this is the first time I've talked about this on the Kirkstone videos, and it's not something which is as prevalent now as it was 25-30 years ago, but basically botanists could be split into what they call splitters and lumpers. And basically the splitters would create as many different kinds of species as possible diversifying between species based on very small differences. So as we talked about before in some of the unboxings, a botanist discovers a plant with very short spines and they give it a Latin name and it gets written up in all the journals and it's accredited to that botanist. They've done the job, they've discovered something. Then that same botanist goes and discovers a similar plant but with very long spines, and they call that something else and that has a name. So you've got two species now. Another kind of botanist would find a plant and they would say, well, I found this plant. Oh look, I found another plant. But they're very, very similar. The only difference is in the length of the spines. And they would just give that one species name, accepting the natural variability between populations. So there's the splitters, they create huge numbers of species. There's the lumpers, they create a much smaller number of species. And so the debate raged on between those two parametric extremes, and never the twain could meet. So there was a dynamic tension between those two schools of philosophy within botany. But then people started using genetic identification, looking at things like chromosome counts, and at present that is the overarching theory within which all botanical classification happens. So a plant may look very different from another plant, very different, and we'll come to that very soon, and yet because they're chromosomally similar, because the number of chromosomes within the genome, within the genetic structure, is similar, then those plants will be related. So the current thinking goes. But it is only current thinking. It's not the truth. It doesn't come from God. It's just a way of looking at plant populations. Now the impact for that on us and our understanding of Gymnocalycium is that Gymnocalycium is a very widespread genus across South America. It's particularly prevalent in Brazil. No, it's particularly prevalent in Argentina, with smaller number of species in Brazil. And other big population centres are Uruguay and Paraguay and Bolivia. So 5 South American countries the Gymnocalycium are found in. And because of the range of the plant geographically and the different geographical forces which have come to play on the species as they've evolved over the thousands of years, then there are differences between them chromosomally which may not be so apparent when you look at the plants physically. Now if we go back to when I first started collecting cacti, Gymnocalycium was seen to be in a very broadish alliance with plants like Arroya, like this Arroya neoperuviana here, and with other members of groups like Matucana, like this Submatucana poltzii. Whereas when you look at a Gymnocalycium structure and you look at the formation of the flowers and the way the flowers are formed, you can see a very strong alliance with plants from other South American small globular cacti groups like Denmosa and Weingartia and Acanthocalycium. This is Acanthocalycium. So there are a number of alliances which can be drawn, but the current placing of Gymnocalycium is not so much to see it as part of the old Cactus type group, but to see it in a broader Trichocereus type group, which has a huge number of genera within the overarching Trichocereanae subfamily within cacti, within the Cactaceae, and some of those plants do not seem to be closely related. So as an example of how uncomfortable some of those relationships are, you'd have something like a very small growing plant like a Rebutia or a Sulco-Rebutia would be considered to be very, very closely related to something like Browningia, like Browningia candelaris. Now Browningia is an enormous tree-like plant, not at all similar morphologically to a small rubetia. So I don't want to get into too much detail here, and you may already be thinking, I only wanted to know about Gymnocalyciums, what's he talking about? The point is, the understanding of the relationship between plants is different. Gymnocalycium is now no longer seen as being within a smaller group of plants, along with Matricana, Arroya, Submatricana, and those open, naked, flowered group of plants, which we could consider to be the old Borsey cactus group. It is now seen to be a key constituent within a very large Trichocereus group, which has about 25-30 genera including a lot of columnar cacti like Oreocereus, Espostoa, etc, 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 etc. Now for me, if I were to express an opinion, I cannot see a natural alliance between these smaller growing globular mountainous plants, which largely grow under cover, which Gymnocalycium often does, than these huge columnar tree-like cacti which grow out on the plains as standalone figures, like the North American saguaro. So there's still a lot of work to be done to make the genus concept of Gymnocalycium simple, which right now it isn't. It's a little confused as to how these different South American groupings fit together. So key points. Gymnocalycium are found in 5 countries: Paraguay, Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina and Bolivia. Gymnocalycium are smaller growing globular cacti, which probably range on average from 9 to 15 centimeters, with the odd larger growing plant like Saglionis growing up to around about 25-30 centimeters across. There are relationships with other plant groups which don't have any spines or bristles on the bud as it develops. As the bud comes up through the areole, before it opens, as you look at it, it is completely naked. Greek gymno, naked, calycium, the calyx, the flower bud. So Gymnocalycium are those South American cacti which don't have hairs or bristles or spines on the flower bud as it develops. Hence the name, naked bud, Gymnocalycium. Realistically, when people have finished mucking about with the genetics, they will probably evolve into a structure or an understanding of about 25 to 35 Gymnocalycium species, not 100 plus. And those species will be divided into 10 to 25 subspecies and varieties, but there will be clearly identifiable streams. And there we are. So we're looking at unboxings, we look at the collection, we look at classification, we look at some habitat plants, and we'll talk generally about the beautiful, beautiful genus which is clearly distinct. That's the one lucky thing we have about Gymnocalycium. It's clearly distinct and different from other plants. You see a Gymnocalycium in flower and you can identify it. It's not easily confused with anything else, and that makes it great for collecting. The plants are generally very easy to look after. They will certainly withstand, apart from maybe Mehanovichii, Friedrichii and a few others, and the coloured mutants, which I won't discuss because they're not something that I personally like or grow, probably need a minimum temperature of about 10 degrees. Most Gymnocalycium in habitat will withstand temperatures down to 5 to 7 degrees centigrade, possibly even lower, possibly down towards freezing if they're dry. The Gymnocalycium of Kirkstone, which are over there, are in an unheated greenhouse in the UK, so they have to stand temperatures down to about 0. And they're doing okay because they kept dry in the winter. And that's about it. If I have gone too much into the botany, please do leave a comment and say we didn't need to know all that, we just wanted to see the plants. But I think it's, for me at least, it's important to understand where the plants actually fit in terms of evolution and in terms of relationship, as well as how beautiful the plants actually are. So for me, I'm sort of halfway between a botanist and a horticulturalist. I like the plants, I like growing the plants, I like looking at different ways of looking after the plants and propagating the plants from cuttings and from seeds and making hybrids and breeding. That's great, the gardening side of the hobby, but I'm also interested in the scientific side of the hobby. If you are not, let me know, and we'll do less of that kind of thing in the future. But the Gymnocalycium concept is a South American, smaller growing, easy to look after, free flowering, and really very, very exciting genus to grow. It won't cause even the beginner any serious problems, and there's enough interesting material to keep the experienced enthusiast going for a lifetime. So, those are Gymnocalyciums. We'll start looking at the actual work now. See you soon. Bye bye for now. Bye bye. Good morning. You find me in a state of unusual preparedness. You can see that the potting area is unusually clean and tidy. I have the official Kirkstone blackcurrant cordial to sip of generously whilst I work, and you'll notice also that there are 3 plants of a particular genus there and one disembodied Gymnocalycium uruguayensis, which is awaiting potting. Now you may ask 2 cogent questions at this point. Why is that poor Gymnocalycium uruguayensis sat there waiting to be potted? And why have these 3 plants, this Gymnocalycium burktii, this Gymnocalycium horstii, and this lovely Gymnocalycium stellatum, still languishing in the potting area, when by all that is right and holy they should have been returned to their fellows, their peers, their friends and their chums in the greenhouse amongst the South American smaller growing globular cacti? Well, there is a reason, my friends, why these plants are tarrying, while a state of preparity exists, and why I have invested heavily, if you've been following this series you will know, in these gorgeous square pots, which I have been searching high, and arduous was the journey, dangerous were the perils, and many and troublesome were the hazards I faced in trying to obtain these 40 or so square pots. You will also notice there are 2 boxes here which have arrived from the Marcholas, from Silconi and from Piotr, who are based in, oh, this is going to be great fun, Wyżegodowo, which is near Bukowska in Poland. And I'd like you to all remember, angielsko-polski trudne, angielski-polsko bardzo, bardzo łatwe. Rozumiesz? Wszystko? Good. So now that I've got the attention of our Polish viewers, at least, we're going to have a look at what is in these boxes from Piotr. What has arrived from Poland? What has arrived Polsko? We just don't know. And whilst there are clues, we can of course be wrong. And I will remind you on this occasion, I have been wrong before, and I'll also remind you of the date. It's 1963, and it was a day which will not be easily forgotten. Well, whatever has or has not arrived from Piotr, it is a lovely, well organised and well protected start to the proceedings, because we have a polystyrene sheet, which I shall now dispose of carefully in case I need it later, and lots of shredded newspaper, which I shall also attempt to dispose of carefully. Not least of which because once you start dropping shredded newspaper, it gets everywhere and it takes ages to pick it up. Right, now we have a box which has got some pretty enticing contents. We also have protective polystyrene all around the edges to protect against lateral collision. Right, what is in the box, I hear you clamour? What is in the box, they wail from a distance. They take to the streets in their masses, and woeful were the lamentations, and terrible were the tearing of clothes and the pulling of hair. But wait no longer, because what we have in this box is a mega haul of almost unimaginable proportions, not Brobdingnagian, not even hyperbolic, but almost of a Googleplex size. Now the packing is absolutely immaculate here. So we had the polystyrene, and then between each plant we actually had, if you will remember, the shredded newspaper, and each individual plant is carefully wrapped in this mummy-like shroud of almost Danskian, or Gdanskian I should say, grimness. Grisly was the pallor, but nevertheless highly protective. Now what shall be revealed in this hall of halls, this monogeneric plenitude? What we have, my friends, is a fabulous specimen of Gymnocalycium ferocior, the spiny one, and that is an absolutely fabulous way to start today's proceedings. I'm not sure what you can see, but what I will tell you is that we have a fabulous, flamboyant and absolutely pyrotechnic beginning, which is damaging my fingers with almost unrestrained glee. That is Gymnocalycium ferocior. And isn't that a doozy? That is a lovely, lovely, lovely place to start. I hope you can see that fabulously spiny plant with that typical Gymnocalycium construction. So there we have those very, very symmetrical ribs and strong spines, and that little chin, the characteristic little chin sticking out from underneath each of the tubercles. Gymnocalycium ferocior. Okay, get rid of the paper because there's going to be a lot of paper and an awful lot of elastic bands. Oh, the tension is palpable, the excitement is mounting, and the overall ambience is one of both disquiet and almost unquenchable anticipation. The wrapping is thorough, the protection is paramount, but the ultimate revelation justifies the delay. We are, as we are quite fond of saying, more than a little excited. And here's another little gem there. Look at that. I can see more than you can see. Ow, ow, ow. That is another glorious specimen plant of Gymnocalycium ritterianum. Carefully, carefully, carefully pulling these. The spines are strong. I don't have to be too careful because they're not in any way fragile. And there we have Gymnocalycium ritterianum. Okay, we'll put that one down there next. And get rid of the paper. The paper's building up, you see. Right. And there we have another nice little specimen. I'm going to give it a space here. Of a slightly less spiny plant. And this, my friends, is a Gymnocalycium. You can tell by the sort of kind of shiny skin. Looks amazingly like a Matucana madisoniorum, but a little bit more spiny. This is Gymnocalycium gibbosum. A darker green, not as spiny, although the spines are still pretty strong and pretty sharp. Okay, so I'll put Gymnocalycium gibbosum down there. Get rid of the next load of paper. And we'll dive into a plant which we do have in the collection already, but this is a plant which is of more interest to me in lots of ways. Not that I'm being disparaging about the lovely small plant we already have. This is a plant which has got habitat data and the collection number, and I like that. I like to know that the plants have been grown from seed which has been collected by a renowned collector from a particular locality, because for some reason in my little botanical mind that gives me the idea that the plant is somehow more authentic, that it has come from a habitat which can be identified, and then the plant can be compared against other plants. And this, without further ado, is simply revealed to be a specimen of Gymnocalycium vateri. Gymnocalycium vateri. Slightly lighter green. I won't waste time by comparing one with the other because you'll be able to do that at the end. But there's Gymnocalycium vateri. Sensu Buning. Okay, so Buning at some point has collected either small specimens in the wild when that was legal, or more probably seeds or cuttings. Okay, Gymnocalycium vateri. Now there's a lot of plants in here and this will take a lot of time, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to continue wrapping and unwrapping, and then I'm going to pop back, or you are going to pop back, I'm not going anywhere. You're going to pop back when I've got through this first box, and we'll have a staging point there. We'll stop there, and then we'll look at what we've got out of this first box, because a lot of this video is going to be taken up by watching me unwrapping, and it's not necessarily the best viewing to eat your burger by, or your slice of pizza, or whatever it is that you are particularly focused on doing while you watch these YouTube videos. So make this the last one. And this is Gymnocalycium Garianum. Oh, that has got some incredibly long spines. Look at that! Yikes! That's a spiny plant. Okay. So I'll continue unwrapping, and I'll see you very, very soon. And welcome back. I've got a bit of an array of plants building up. So this is how far I've got so far. And we're going to come back to those very soon, but I haven't quite finished what I'm doing on this first half of the unboxing section. So I've just, while you were enjoying your break, I've just unpotted this plant which was not labelled. Well, it was labelled but not with a name, and I think that's because it was so obviously a larger specimen of this plant, Gymnocalycium horstii, that anybody who ordered a Gymnocalycium and didn't know Gymnocalycium horstii should be horsewhipped and driven through the streets of Katowice completely naked, because it's a very, very identifiable plant. Couldn't be confused with anything else. So there's horstii. Now I've also got a plant here which I ordered at the same time from our friends, which I know is not a Gymnocalycium. So I thought for the sake of variety, I thought we'd have a look in there and see what we have once I got rid of the elastic band, because this is just a plant that Piotr happened to have going along the way as part of his overall sales. And this is, it's a lot lighter than a cactus. That makes you wonder what it might be. I can see a leaf sticking out now, so I'm starting to put a little picture together in my mind. Oh, that is nice. That's very nice. In fact, it's a bit better than nice. It's actually quite lovely. Now that is a lovely little clump of the smallest Madagascan aloe species, so not at all Gymnocalycium like. A lovely little clump of Aloe decoingzii. Can you see that? Let's turn the camera slightly. Aloe decoingzii. Isn't that a gem? It really is. Right, we'll put that to one side and come back to that after we've finished the current project. Right, let's have a traditional scan over. I'll get the bonus plants down here as well. Don't really need to put the label saying bonus, but I will. I won't include the aloe. So let's see what we've got. Okay, we've got that large, it really is large, about 2 inches across Gymnocalycium horstii there. That's a really, really nice plant. Now we've got another really quite unusual Gymnocalycium, because the ribs are not in any way whatsoever divided into tubercles. So horstii, which looks like very much like, as I said earlier, Matacarnum addisoniorum, or Submatacarnum addisoniorum. And another one which doesn't have any spines is this Gymnocalycium pediophilum. It does have spines, it doesn't have tubercles, so it just has those straightforward ribs. It's a lovely, lovely plant, Gymnocalycium pediophilum. And the other one that didn't get much of a focus earlier because I was rushing is this super spiny Gymnocalycium monvillii, and the sun's just come out to welcome it. Look at that, those lovely, lovely straw yellow spines shining in the English sun. Lovely plant, Gymnocalycium monvillii. Then we have that larger growing Gymnocalycium vateri, sensu buning, a very flat, depressed globular plant in an amazingly light green. I don't know whether it really shows up very well in the video, but a very, very, very light green plant. Gymnocalycium vateri. And then keeping my blackcurrant juice, which I'll move, my blackcurrant juice company, we have that Gymnocalycium gibbosum, that very, very dark, shiny, hence gibbous, very dark and shiny Gymnocalycium gibbosum. Then we have that super spiny Gymnocalycium ritterianum, so obviously named after Ritter. Very, very spiny plant, Gymnocalycium ritterianum. And then we have a Gymnocalycium ferocior, the first plant we opened today. Looks more like a phorocactus, doesn't it? Especially from that angle, or an echinocactus. That is a spiny plant. Then we have Gymnocalycium matoense. We have Gymnocalycium megatai. Isn't that, you talk about geometry, look at that for an angle, isn't that superb? Gymnocalycium megati. Almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Geodecahedral. Look at that construction. Individually separate tubercles and an incredibly geometric shape. Now I wanted to focus on this one here because this is a very small specimen. Thank you, Piotr, for verging on the microscopic. This is Gymnocalycium Kirktii, which is one of the plants which arrived from Hungary the other day. Now these have come from Poland, this one came from Hungary, and this is also Gymnocalycium Kirktii. You notice how this is a lighter grey-green colour. This is variety Nogalens. And this one is Kirktii, subspecies Kirktii, or variety Kirktii. This is the main species, which is a much darker plant, much darker. Then we had that unidentified bonus, which is a super plant. But as I say, I'll have to go on the catalogue to give you an accurate identification, otherwise I'll make a proper chump of myself in just guessing, which I've done a few times on these videos. I don't like it, so I'll check first before speaking. And then there was that other one, there's that other one. Another bonus there, thank you, another freebie from Piotr. And finally a plant with a fabulous name. This is Gymnocalycium Isozoxii. Isn't that lovely? A lovely plant. And for those viewers who are not into the genus Gymnocalycium or smaller growing South American cacti generally, you may be saying, what is the fuss about? Well, the fuss is about really the fact that they have absolutely beautiful and regular flowers all the way from February through to November, December this year. We actually had some flowering Gymnocalyciums in December. And also because of that old collecting thing, they're variations on a theme. They're similar enough to form a set and different enough to have their own identity. The Isozoxii. So there we are. Let's have a last pan over these Gymnocalyciums and try and get them from their best vantage point, if I possibly can. And what will happen now, I'll just turn this Isozoxii around. What will happen now is I'll start potting these up, and I won't film each and every single individual plant being potted, because there will be variations on a very similar theme, and you become very uninterested very quickly. There we are, a fantastic delivery from Piotr in Poland, and that's the first half of the Gymnocalycium mega haul.